Okay, let's not let them walk all the way back down to their seat again. They want it all. Let's get this. Okay, and half the guys booed, Then here's the funniest part of the whole deal. At that point, we were a couple of smug spoon pluggers that weren't letting on that we were smug. But we was, take that. The next time you start laughing when somebody tells you something, maybe you think about this moment. That's what we were thinking. At any rate, they said, we've got so many prizes left over because we assumed there would be, 25 different winners. So we got some prizes that have been donated, some really nice things, some Dickson, some good stuff. They said, so what we're going to do, y'all have tickets. We're going to draw some tickets at random and give these prizes away. They called the first number, 287. Guess who had 287? I'm not kidding you, Jim. It was my ticket.
Wow.
I stood up, and you should have heard everybody booing. I said, listen, I'm donating to the next. Whoever wins, you just won this prize, too. Pull the next number. I guess it gets silly. Oh, man, when we were driving home, we couldn't stop on that CB. We laughed all the way to North Carolina. But those old days, it was all, and again, you could probably hear in some of our conversation, some of my frustration is, under the worst conditions, like we never saw, 200 of the supposedly best muskie guys in the country, they couldn't catch one fish, but a spoon plugger goes in there, not only catches a fish, but catches 4 when no fish were being caught, and only missed the state record by 2 ounces.
Wow.
And again, it just points out my frustration is that nobody else knows this stuff. And today, what's the National Spoon Plugging Club? Probably is not 300 members. It's ridiculous.
Yep.
It's just a shame. And I don't know if there's anything we can do about it, but as far as Buck and what he's meant to the game, there's the real big shame is that nobody knows him. If nobody knew me, that's okay. But unfortunately, more people know me than they know Buck. I actually wrote in Fins and Feathers one time. I think it was either that or Outdoor Life. Somebody wrote, the number one fishing educator in this country, Don Dickson. Well, no, that's not true. They wrote it. It was nice, and people called me about it and let me know about it. And it made me smile, but it's not true. And that's when it hit me, more people sort of know me because I got it on TV and I tried to, reach a national audience with the truth. Even though as much success as I had, it still failed compared to, the rest of the fishing community. But more people know about me than know about Buck Perry. Well, that's just crazy. Because the truth is, I never had an original idea about a fish in my life. I'm not that smart. I did go to college. I was a music major. And Buck was a scientist. He was like a full physics professor at age 21. I mean, that's unheard of.
Well,
University of North Carolina State. But yeah, if you ever just saw the inner workings of his factory and how he started and built everything, and a lot of people don't know he invented the first depth sounder.
Yeah, I heard that story too.
Yeah, he was doing everything by hand, by feeling the lures, which was difficult, and I did a lot of that when I was beginning because I didn't really have any knowledge of how to map and interpret structure and so on and so forth. I just found a bar and would run the lures over it until I couldn't find it bumping anymore, and then I put the next size on and make a few crisscross passes. I was seated advanced like that too. But he used to do he made all his determinations of all the facts concerning the fish that he wrote about in all of his material. He did it all by feel. It's mind-boggling to think of that. But when he had the idea of the depth sounder, he said, hey, these World War II submarines. They got sonar. Why not? Why can't we, adapt that to, be able to adapt it to our fishing idea here? And if we could see through the sonar what depths we were in, it would be so much easier to, draw our maps, come to our conclusions, et cetera, et cetera. So when he got that idea, now this is the truth of it. Remember what anybody else tells you. There was a guy named Carl Lawrence who used to come to his factory all the time out in North Carolina. He was a sales guy. He was just a salesman. That's all he was. And Buck had this idea, so he started building the first depth sonder. And he put it together, and it was the original green box. It took him 3 weeks. From beginning to end, he invented the first green box. Carl Lawrence just took it and promoted it and got some backers, got some money, and ended up marketing the thing. The Lawrence Fish Finders. Buck always hated it, and it's another example of how Buck felt about the promotion of fishing, or in his case, the lack of. But Carl Lawrence became famous for having this wonderful fishing tool, this depth sonder, because he called it a fish finder. Lawrence Fish Finder. Buck said, imagine calling that thing a fish finder. He said, how in the world you put that thing on a boat and let it go out and find fish for you and then come back in and tell you where they are? Come on. It's insulting our intelligence. It's a depth sounder. Tells you what depth you're in. They say, well, yeah, but when fish are suspended, you can see them on the thing. Well, largemouth bass don't suspend. So throw that out the window. And how do you know what it is if you see something in between your, in between the unit and the lake floor? How do you know what that is? It could be a fish, could be something else. Who knows? I don't know. But calling it a fish finder just absolutely drove Buck crazy. He hated that so much.
So that first fish finder was actually the needle type?
No, the first, the thing that Lawrence, the green box, that's what Buck put together. He didn't like the fact that the light, after he had invented it, he didn't like the light. When the sun would hit it a certain way, you'd lose your signal. You couldn't see it. So that's when he had the idea of making this little needle meter that would be better. Well, obviously it was, and that's what he was using when I first ran into him in 1969. He had that needle. And over the years, when I was getting really into the game, I said, this little thing is not very saleable. We need to make one that's prettier and bigger, easier to read, with a little more modern technology, because that little thing originally, I think, ran on 9-volt batteries, and you're always losing your battery. I wanted one to run off your big battery in your boat. And so we had another guy that came on board, was a spoon plugger, and he was an electronics guy, so he actually built our bigger meter, the one that we started marketing after that. But it seemed almost impossible to me in the later years to be able to or have to go fishing without a meter. I mean, I couldn't even imagine it. It just would almost seem impossible to me anymore. And then I started thinking back about how when Buck was putting all of his information together, he was doing it all by feel. Unbelievable.
Right.
It really was. So you had some other questions. I just started talking, and I haven't let you ask me any questions.
You know what? It's funny. Probably 90% of the questions I had eventually came up in the course of the conversation.
Really?
Yeah. I think just I'm looking at the list here now. I think one of the other things. Well, first getting back to that needle meter, that's something that I've just seen pictures of one, or maybe in video, one of the older videos of Buck's seen it on there. But you just commented that you had worked or worked with someone else and developed one that you actually sold for a while?
Oh yeah, we sold them for I forget now, $200, $100, 200. I can't even remember. It's been so long. I think I've got 4 or 5 of them left. And today, the technology that we use for that one is so antiquated and silly,
Right.
just because of how technology has moved on and so on and so forth. So if I were to want to build one today, it would probably be way more sophisticated than the one we had, but it would do the exact same thing.
Right.
See, in order to actually really do a good job of mapping a structure, you need not one of the, quote, modern day deals. You need a meter. A meter allows you to do it so easily that, to me, there's just no comparison between, using a flasher or using one of the new graphs to try to map a structure. Ridiculous.
Right.
It would be something brand new and totally foreign to me. Wouldn't even know how to begin. But you give me a meter, I'll tell you within. Well, I got to be almost as good as Buck, and tell my wife, you should be. We could have maybe 24 layers of wire out fishing at 60 feet, and I'd say you should be catching a fish right about now. And within 2 or 3 seconds, boom, she'd have one.
Wow.
Because you get to a point, if you have the proper map, you have the knowledge of how to interpret that map. I'm talking about a detailed, drawn map of a particular structure. You can draw a circle and say, there's my fish. And then by getting really good at your presentation in deep water, you can pretty much know when your lure with X amount of layers out is going to be at that spot that you just passed over. You can call the fish, even trolling. So, to me, a needle is like the greatest thing ever invented. It doesn't muddy the water. It's easy to see. And in Florida, almost everything you're doing in Florida, if you want to catch bass in Florida, almost every lake, you're running one of the best mapping jobs I ever did. I fished a lake, and we've got some pictures that are scary pictures of huge bass that we were catching out in the middle of the lake, over and over and over and over and over again off of 6-inch break lines. And I had a couple of schools on that lake. And I tell these guys, we're not even looking for a 1-foot break line, which is normal in Florida. We're looking for 6 inches. And you really have to have a needle to see it. Because you can go from the bank, or you can go from 2 or 3 feet of water, long flats of 2 and 3 feet of water, and drive the boat for 100 yards, and all of a sudden you're in 14 feet of water, but you never saw the needle move. So you had to go back and forth and absolutely watch it intently. And in this particular lake, you go to 11 feet. You never saw the needle actually move. But all of a sudden, 100 yards later, you're in 11 feet of water. And you keep watching, and almost instantly, you were in 11 and a half. Right? You can see the meter go right between 11 and 12, like instantly. And my students would say, you got to be kidding. I say, think about this from the standpoint of the fish. And everything you know about spoon plugging. That's like a curb on a sidewalk to a street.
Right.
Fish can see that with no problem. That's a light change to the fish. They move right to it and move right along it. Well, not only do you have to establish that 6-inch break line in this particular case, and I found many more of those since then, by the way, in Florida. But not only do you have to establish it, but then you have to present a lure on it. And you could be in 11 feet and think that you're on it, but then when you turn out and turn out and turn out and turn out and turn out, you're still at 11 feet. Well, you weren't on it. You were on 11-foot flat. So in order to run a lure on a troll and keep it on that 6-inch break line, That took some real work, but you do the work, the setup work. First, you map it, you discover it, you map it. Let's say this brake line runs for a mile. I'm going to take the time to set my markers out. I'm going to go from the deep to the shallow. When it goes from 11.5 to 11, I'm going to go another 10 feet, drop a marker. And I'm going to have markers out for a mile. And now we don't have to use railroad spikes. We got to actually buy markers. And I'm going to have those markers out, and I'm going to keep my eye on that meter. And I'm going to turn out, I'm going to start on those markers, and I know I'm about 10 feet away. So I'm going to get on, and I'm going to watch that meter. When I see 11.5, I'm going to start to angle that boat back in towards those markers. And the instant I see it even start to wiggle, I'm going to turn back out. So I see 11.5, I'm going to turn back in. And I ran that brake line the first time. Buck was there fishing another part of the lake. We were mapping this lake, or looking to try to map this lake. He came up to me in noontime, said, "Did you find anything?" I said, "Yep." He said, "Good, because I didn't find much." He said, "What did you find?" I said, "I found a limit of 6-pound bass." He said, "Really?" I opened the live well and showed him. I think at the time it's a 10-fish limit in Florida. I think it was down to 6 by then. But I had 6 big bass. I think all six-ish. I pulled them out and threw them in the water. And I said, "Here's the best part. There's nobody catching these fish." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "It's a 6-inch brake line." He said, 6 inches? I said, "Yeah. I'm not kidding. Watch, come here." And I got him in my boat, and we anchored his boat down. I drove straight out from shallow to deep, showed him that breaking from 11 to 11.5. He said, "Man, I thought I'd seen it all." He said, "I hadn't seen that one before." I said, "Buck, they're all along this rascal at 11.5 feet. And then if you went all the way out to the middle of the lake, to the deepest spot, it was only I think 16 feet at the deepest spot. But when those fish would come from the deepest area, and exactly what route they took to get to that spot where I was catching them, I'm not exactly sure, but I didn't care. But I had an identifiable brake line that when the fish got there, they were just strung out on that brake line. And almost at every marker, it seemed like every marker or so, I'd pick up another fish or two, So they were spread along the brake line. It was like a movement of fish, and they were sort of spread along that brake line. It wasn't just in one spot, but it was on one brake line, and that brake line was only 6 inches. So without a meter, I would have never seen that, never in a million years. I'd have just known that somewhere in here there's fish, but I can't identify where. So if I can't identify a spot to fish, I shouldn't be fishing. I should be going somewhere else to find a spot that I could identify. So that really opened my eyes to a lot of Florida, too. I had a spot like that also in Lake Kissimmee. It was only 6-inch brake line. I made a film. I've got a bass film that I went out to. You would find this interesting. Maybe I'll see if I can get it put on disc. But I made a tape. Buck talked about this reservoir, again, out in Missouri, that in the fall, when they pull it down like 75 feet. Big, huge reservoir. And he said all the regular structure is all of a sudden it's exposed so you can see it. And I had this idea of, he said, and during that time of year, he says, all the fish come to the dam, and they're all along the riprap, all these big bass. You just, 500, 400, catching big bass. Crazy. He said, it's every year. He said, if it's snowing, it's even better. He said, we'll go out. So we went out and fished it, caught a bunch of big fish. I went back the year after at the same time of year, but the big fish weren't in there. I was going to make a little bass tape, and then I was going to show some of the exposed structure. So since the big fish weren't in there, I got a few little 2.5-pounders, and I sort of gave up on that. And I said, I'm going to take advantage of this. Put my boots on, and I walked that reservoir. I walked out to actual bars that had multiple brake lines, that had fingers, that had sharper brakes, and things that were out of water that are normally underwater. And talk about an educational tape. If guys could never see it in their mind's eye, all of a sudden they could actually look at it now. This is what we're talking about. And this, my friends, is a brake line, and you walking right along in the mud, It was fun. And I made this tape, and then somebody had asked me about making a bass tape of fishing in Florida, and because most of my business was Midwest, and I didn't do a lot of fishing in Florida, only just fun fishing for me. So I said, okay. So I went down to, somebody asked me about Lake Kissimmee, and I hadn't fished Lake Kissimmee. It's relatively close to me, but I never had fished it. Of course, it has a great reputation. So I went down to fish it, and I found one of my typical spots, a slot of water about 18 feet deep, which I recall, out in the middle. All the guys are casting up into the grasses, and, it's got a lot of grass, and a lot of guys, Bass Pro type guys are fishing this lake, and I'm about 100 yards away from them out in the middle of the lake. Threw out some markers on a 6-inch brake line, and believe it or not, it was 250 water, 10 to 10 and a half, leading into either 16 or 18 feet, something like that. And I threw some markers out, and they had some pretty wide turns on this brake line. It was creating like little mini bars, And it ran for, I don't know, it was one of those, ran for, a good half a mile at least. And I had some markers out, and I started running long line 250, just ticking a little bit every now and then, tick a little bit, and started mowing down the big fish. And the speed was really up. It was like I was throwing a big wake in the back of the boat. It was probably at 10 mile an hour, something like that.
Wow. And
just killing these big fish. And these bass guys are in there flipping. I didn't see one other fish caught. And I think, we filmed it. We filmed it all. And when you have it nailed down, I'll show you how it's almost too easy. When you have the structure nailed down, and you have the presentation down, and you've got the equipment, in this case a 250, that'll do the job and stay at that depth regardless of speed. And all of a sudden the speed control is like really critical because the fish were extremely fast. We were catching every pass. And so my cameraman sitting in front of the boat, he's laughing and giggling and stuff. I said, I really want to make a point on this film, because most of the time, I just take off and I hit a fish, and then I'd put the boat up in neutral and he'd start filming. And I said, I want you to leave the film on. I want you to leave the camera on. And I'm going to start off. This was after we had stopped, caught a fish, released it. I said, I'm going to make a reverse pass. I said, but I want to make a point about how fast I'm going. Most people, when I talk about speed control, they don't believe how fast you need to be sometimes to catch a bass. So I said, I want you to film the wake that I'm throwing in the back of the boat. At the time, I think I was running either running a 40 horse or a 60 horse tiller. I think it was 40 horse at that time. But at any rate, I'm literally going about 10 mile an hour, something like that. I said, now what I'm going to do so that they know we're not cutting tape and editing like some of the other people who film do, I want you to just keep filming until I hit a fish. But I want you to film me letting out the line, counting the layers, doing all what we do, and then when I thumb down on the rod, or thumb down on my reel, so we got the line out, we're starting to go. I want you to keep that same shot of a little bit of me with my rod and the motor and the wake. That's the most important thing. And then I explained to the camera, which I wanted the people to understand, what I want to do is show you how fast we're going right now to catch these fish. And in order to do it, I'm just going to take off, and we're just going to keep running film until we hit a fish. And the fish are pretty active, so, I'm pretty sure we can do that pretty quick. But I want you to see, I'm not joking at how important speed is. We took off, I thumbed down on the reel, he's filming, and from the time I thumbed down on the reel Couldn't have been 5 seconds. Boom. And all you can see, he's filming, the shot that he's taken directly behind the boat. You see this big bass jump out of the water with like 9-pounders. And it showed the speed, which is all I was trying to do, and it was like it was on cue. This big old 9-pounder just jumped on that lure, jumped on that 250 and come straight up out of the water.
Wow.
And so half of that bass tape I shot down in Florida. And I talk about, these little break lines. In Florida, they don't, people down here, we don't have the same structure types and the same lake and reservoir types that are up in the rest of the country. So people say, well, all that fishing bars and humps and all that stuff, it works up there, but we don't have any of that stuff down here. Well, yeah, but we do have structure. And your structure, 99% of the time in Florida, is in the form of a break line. That becomes your structure. It's a one-sided structure leading to deep water. Because when the fish come in, because of the depths, if they become active and move to 10.5 feet, you can't expect them to move any shallower than that. If they could, they might, but, I wouldn't count on it. But if I can get them to move to 10.5 feet, and they're not probably 50 feet from their home area to get to that 10.5 feet, it becomes their structure. It's a one-sided structure. And there will always be little features on that break line where the fish will normally make contact or be more prevalent than other areas of that break line. Where there's a little finger, a little hook, or a little clean spot, where there was basically a mucky bottom, but all of a sudden there's a clean sandy spot on that break line, there's your fish. And we find it, of course, by trolling and running our spoon plugs.
Did you ever release that?
That's a good tape.
So you did release that tape? I don't recall ever seeing that tape. So that was something that you had out there?
Yeah, it's out there somewhere. But, it's a stinking videotape. Nobody has video players anymore, including me.
Right.
So somebody was telling me I had to get all of them transferred over, and I guess I could. But you know how...
I years ago, maybe 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, someone put a link on the Spoonpluggers forum about someone selling the VHS workshop tapes on eBay. So I was, just curious watching the bit. You wouldn't believe what it sold for.
people trying to sell that old stuff. Well, you know how as you get older and more experienced in all of life. I'm not talking about the fishing thing. I got my education in fishing from age 30 to age 40. But beyond that, the experience and all about life and so on and so forth, you look back and you say, man, I know that was all the right information, but boy, I didn't like my presentation of that information at all. You're never happy with the finished product, ever, ever, ever. And today, if I were to do it, it would probably be much better. If I were to redo it, let's say. But yeah, I know some guys have decided that it might be fun if they take my tapes, and now, because it's been, whatever the law says, more than 7 years, they can turn it into a disc, and start selling them or something. But I wouldn't be really proud of all of that, to be honest about it. But it's the best thing available.
Yes, yeah, it is. People still looking for it.
I think maybe I'll give some thought. How many guys do you have in your little club?
Well, the webinar club that we have, like an online club, it's maybe 35. But, I was involved with our Illinois club when it first started, and I started spoon plugging in 87, and the club started in January of 88. Now it's, there's really not much of a club left anymore. But most of those years, we probably had about 20 active members. And
I see.
Yeah, and that's probably, in Illinois, Chicago area had one of the biggest clubs. There is a pretty good sized club currently that exists in Indiana and I think Michigan. I want to say about, I took a look at the directory, and like you said, there can't be more than 300 names in that. And I want to say 75% of them are all located in the Midwest.
Which is about where all of my clients were. But it kind of goes to what we were talking about before. When I was active, and we had the little TV thing with Kurt Gowdy, because it opened up. Kurt Gowdy said, somebody told me the guy was making a claim that he could go anywhere in the country to any body of water, even though they'd never seen it before, regardless of species, and within an hour be catching big fish. Well, I said, I don't believe that. I've been around the game for 70 years, and I just don't think anybody can make that statement. So I tend not to believe it. So when I got involved with my old friend, I decided to contact this guy and put him to a challenge. So we sent him to 4 different locations to catch 4 different species of fish. Let me show you what happened. And then, of course, in every spot, I'm just killing the big fish, and it just goes on and on and on and on. Well, when that happened, all of a sudden, and I'll just give you where are you from again?
Chicago.
Chicago. Chicago was my second biggest city. My biggest city was Minneapolis. In Minneapolis, people that had either been to my schools, been to my on-the-water schools, or had bought my tapes, in Minneapolis City proper alone, I had 20,000 customers.
Wow.
Now, when you think about when I'm active, I have, hubs like that with 20,000 guys. But over time, if I'm not active, and there aren't TV shows, and there aren't any discussions about it, and now Buck's gone, and so on and so forth. And what you have is some people that aren't having the success that they once dreamed of having. Like we talked earlier, no satisfaction, they quit. They give up. And that's the reason there's only a handful of clubs or serious structure fishermen. And of course, you could be a serious fisherman and not be in a club. But let's face it, if the representation in clubs nationwide is less than a local bass tournament gets, that means that nobody's doing it. Nobody's actually getting it done. And that, my friend, is very sad. That's all I can say.
Yep,
it's sad because catching fish, and another thing that really was important to me, just because I was a baseball player. My sons are baseball players. And I was a scratch golfer. When I was 14, I won the Pittsburgh Junior Amateur. When I was 14, and I never had a lesson.
Wow.
But I caddied, and I watched everybody, and all the good players. I tried to replicate what they did. And when I was 14, I beat 17-year-olds and shot a 70 on a 7,200-yard course when I was 14.
Wow.
I'm not saying, look how great I was. All I'm saying is I was so damn competitive. When it came to this fishing thing and I saw what Buck could do, man, I'm telling you, you couldn't stop me. There was no way that anybody was going to stop me from becoming, in my mind, I said, Buck made all the discoveries, but mechanically presenting lures. No one will ever beat me on the water. Not even Buck. And that was my intent. That was my mindset. That's how I went after it. I was going to be the best. And to me, if you're not try to be the best, why do it? Don't do it. Well, if I had that mindset and I never caught a fish, we wouldn't be talking right now. You've got to have some success to keep it going. Even when you're the most competitive person, you've got to have some success. And that success, in most cases, you have to sort of force feed some people and take them by the hand and get them that first taste of, this is what's possible. You can actually make a statement. You can go anywhere, catch fish. Bass is a bass. Walleye's a walleye. They do the same thing. They're the same critter. You just have to go to a certain lake type, whether it's a reservoir. That's another thing you break down real quick. All of our book knowledge can get us to the right answer relatively quickly if you have all your book knowledge. Okay, somebody asked me to fish a reservoir. Well, what is it? Is it a lowland 1, lowland 2, lowland 3, lowland 4? Is it a flatland 1, a flatland 2? Or is it a highland reservoir, highland number 1? What are my keys to fish in a highland number 1? Well, I got to go towards the headwaters, the only place where the structure flattens out a little bit, and I have a little chance at better watercolor. So I've got some keys that I feed off of. Flatland number 2, where am I going to fish? Man-made structure. It's the first thing I'm looking for. That's a key to a flatland 2. So you're pinning things down through your knowledge. You pin things down. Like when I take these writers up, I wouldn't know what I was getting into till I got there. And then I'd have to, okay, what's my watercolor situation? Do I have man-made structure? What kind of a reservoir is it? Is it a natural lake? Okay, where's my weed line? If it's 10 feet, it's fishable. If it's 20 feet, I'm in trouble. I better just break out the wire right from the get. So you can, through your knowledge, you can shorten the route to your overall success of catching fish that day. Take all your knowledge before you launch your boat. And you know what to do, you know what you're looking for, and then when you find it, and it's an old saying, but it's so true, how are you going to find that spot if you don't know what you're looking for? If it's a lowland, I know what I'm looking for. If it's a lowland number 1, I know exactly what I'm looking for. So when I find it, when I come across it, I'll recognize it. Once I recognize it, find it, recognize it, then I'll map it. Once I map that individual structure, now I can interpret it, and now I know how to best make my presentation of lures. And then I've got to present my lures, casting and trolling, to all depths as far as I can read the structure, from the shallowest to the deepest spot that I can read. Once I've done that, I've done my job. And if you do that every day you go fishing, you're going to catch fish. You're going to catch fish every day. That's simple.
Well,
I guess I'm running out of gas. there was silence there for a minute.
Wow.
I'm just looking. We probably been on the phone a couple hours, haven't we?
Yeah, well, it doesn't feel like it. Yeah, I'm looking at my.
It doesn't feel like it. I think you called at 9 o'clock. I'm just looking. It says 11:44. That's even more than 2 hours.
Yeah, I'm looking at my timer on the hit and recorder. It's 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't seem that way. It doesn't seem that long.
Wow.
When you're talking fishing.
What's that?
I said when you're talking fishing, it doesn't seem that long.
No.
But listen, did you have any specific questions that we didn't get to? So if you do, ask it so I can answer it, and so you don't feel like we've left something out for today.
One question that one of the guys had here was just wanted to ask about the troller boats, and how that deal came about, and just the history of coming up with the boat you had.
Well, one of the bad things that I didn't like about Buck's equipment was he's working out of these little V-bottom boats, and there's no casting platforms, and there's none of the sort of the modern day look to it, but there's not a lot of stability in those V-bottom boats, little 14-foot aluminum, and that's what I started with, 14-foot aluminum Alumacraft, with a 10-horse engine, because he said that's what you need to be able to troll, and so on and so forth. And when it came to building a sort of a, quote, modern day, more sophisticated boat, and in my opinion, the only way to do that was to go to fiberglass. He was, standoffish to all of that until we actually built it. But a friend of mine in Pittsburgh, named Jimmy Croninwood, he had a big boat sales place. His dad had it for 50, 60 years. And it was a big boat sales operation known to a lot of people in the Pittsburgh area. And young Jim, I think Jimmy's 4 years older than me, liked to race boats. He raced a lot of Allison Halls. He would build race boats and race in California, racing all around. But they were definitely boat people. And when I was with him, and he was a friend, but when I was with him at one point, he asked me about how my fishing thing was going. I said, Jimmy, it's going great except for one thing. I said, I would like to have a more modern type of boat to fish out of, but yet one that does, from a fishing standpoint, does some specific things that are a must for the way I'm fishing. He said, like what? I said, well, we do a lot of trolling in our fishing. And I said, with a V-bottom boat, if you get any kind of wind, that wind gets the nose of that boat and it throws it hard to one side, and you have to over-adjust with the engine to try to get it back to where you were trying to fish. And I said, it's not the, if it's dead calm, it's okay, but it's not the best boat for trolling, number one. Number two, nobody makes a glass boat that trolls well, that I know of. And even though it's not the best for running rough water, I would like to run a tri-hull configuration so that I can have a casting platform in the front, have a trolling boat, but still have a comfortable casting position, casting platform. I said the closest thing that I can see to what I want, it would have to be stable, but it would also have to be very light. It has to be able to run with a small horsepower engine. I said the closest thing I see that would be like kind of what I'm thinking about is Boston Whaler makes a little boat, 13-footer. My boat would have to be a little bit bigger than that, but they make a 13-footer. That's sort of the idea of what I want, but they base their thing on salt water and steering wheel and stuff, and I have to be able to run with a tiller handle and so on and so forth. So he said, hey, let's build one. I said, yeah, right. Okay. Well, one thing led to the next, and we started to build that boat. Bought a Boston Whaler, 13-footer, and we turned that rascal upside down and tore it apart. Two hobby horses, two saw horses, and tore it apart. And the troller came about by copying the good things about the Whaler. And the Whaler is a very stable boat. In most serious parts of the world, the Coast Guard's running Boston Whalers. However, when we turned the first one out, it didn't troll right. It was drafting too much water. It was, it just wasn't right. So I told Jimmy, well, got to make another mold because I got to have more lift. I got to have this. I mean, we just went through stuff like constantly. And I think before he turned one out, that I said, I think we got it. I think he had gone through about 8 molds. It wasn't cheap. And he built this little side building next to their big sales thing, and it grew and grew and grew and grew, and pretty soon we were selling, I don't know, 400 or 500 boats a year. And then I started fishing some bigger water, and I was never happy with the fact that it was a little rough riding in choppy water. And of course I was fishing every day pretty much somewhere, so I had to fish all kind of conditions, and overall it wasn't as big or as comfortable or as wide or as dry a boat as I wanted to have. So we ended up making a 17-footer, 16 and a half.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, we made a bigger one, and when I took it to Lake Erie to test it, and of course by then we had fine-tuned how much draft and how much lift and all of the different things that we had to keep filling in, taking away, filling in, taking away. We had pretty much got it to where it was the exact trolling boat where I could take my tiller handle and move it 3 inches to one side or another and correct myself on a brake line. That front end would just snap. Boom, boom, boom. where I had to push the tiller like 15 inches to get it to turn 6 inches in the front of the boat. I mean, I got to tell you, it was really doing the job. So we wanted to transfer all of that to a bigger boat, wider, deeper, and that's when they started making the bigger engines with tiller handles. So I was running a 60-horse Johnson on a 17-foot boat, and to me, that was the perfect boat. And when I discovered Excel Communications and made $35,000 in my first month of network marketing with my fishing guys, Jimmy retired. He sold his boat business, retired to Florida, and sold the boat making business to a guy who was his manager. That guy lasted about 2 years without me being active, and he ended up selling and going out of business. So I just saw Jimmy. I was in Pittsburgh a month ago, catching a couple of ball games, seeing some old friends, and I met with Jimmy. I hadn't seen him in years. And we did a lot of laughing and reminiscing about how all that boat stuff came about,
Wow, it's
I think he said in the end we sold about 7,000 boats. So it was a nice add-on business for me. It was good for him. And it gave me the rig that I wanted, being a guy that was fishing every day. I wanted to be comfortable. I wanted to stay dry. I wanted to be able to go, and at top end, the boat would run at about 40 mile an hour, 40 mile an hour, which was fine. With a 60. So I could run, I could fish the big water, right? And I could have the same snap in the front end on the trolling basis that I had with the smaller boat. So it was another thing I wanted Buck to really promote, but in the beginning, he called the first one, we put the Spoonplugger name on it. But he wouldn't advertise it. He wouldn't put it in a magazine or anything. We probably could have sold hundreds of thousands of them.
Wow. That's right.
Be in a boat business today, but that was when he was right at the top of his popularity as far as the nation was concerned, with the fishing magazine and the educational editor and all of that. But he didn't take advantage of it. And so the boat business, along with the meters, the boats, everything went by the wayside, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Because we had the best boat, we had the best meter, and of course we had all of the knowledge, and you had the factory was cranking, and I mean everything was positioned to go out and actually make it a big national brand. And that's the sad part. Spoonplugging never became a big national brand. It just did. And anybody that's ever been fishing with me, or been associated over the years, I had guys that came to my schools every year, for 20 years, wouldn't miss one. They've seen enough to know that it's all true. Everything Buck ever wrote, every word, everything he ever said was absolutely 100%, wasn't a theory. He took his theories, and by the time he was 30 years old, he had proved each and every one of those theories to be fact, proven it scientifically. A physics major, physics professor. He didn't like dealing in theories. He liked dealing in facts. And he said, Donnie, how are you going to teach people how to catch fish in a tidal basin if you've never fished one? You got to go fish tidal water. Or, you've never fished a Highland number 3. You've never fished those out west highlands that are straight up and straight down. How are you going to teach somebody how to do that? It's impossible. You have to go fish it. How about some of those California reservoirs where they're catching all these huge bass?
Right.
You need to go out there and fish it. Oh, clear water, horrible. I hated California. But at any rate, he would force us, to go fish all of these different waterways and see all of their different things. So some are your favorites, some aren't quite your favorites, but you're at least able to discuss it with some degree of intelligence because you've been there. You've been there and done it. My wife is in absolute disbelief. She just walked back in. Just on the phone? we just realized we've been on the phone 3 hours.
Check the batteries.
The batteries, I'm sure it's toast or close. I'm on my cell phone.
Boy, I appreciate your time. That 3 hours really went by quick. I don't want to take up your whole day here, but I guess real quick, just to end things, what's been up with you? I guess after you stopped out of the limelight of fishing, if you want to say. Hey.
Well, what happened was one of my fishing guys told me about this company called XL Communication, where people were making more money in a month than they used to make in a year, and I was all about making money. And of course, this was my knowledge thing. I'd been on my own with my fishing career for 15 years at that point. This was 1995, and TV shows had gone on, and we had tons of customers, doing my summer schools, and everything was great. He said, you need to look into this, because if you started networking with your fishing clients, you can make a fortune. He said, there's a school teacher from Danville, Kentucky, who's the #1 producer in his company, been doing it 3 years, and he used to teach school. He's 32 years old, and this month his check was $254,000. I said, what? For a month? He said, yeah. I gotta meet this guy. That's what I said. Sure enough, he agreed to meet with me, but he was out in Texas at the time. I said, I'll fly out and meet you. I flew out and met him and found out that it was all legitimate. It was for real. And I wrote a letter to some key people in Chicago, some key people in Minneapolis. I said, I'm starting a new little side business. I'm just networking with some of my fishing buds from around the country. It's a chance to make some extra income. You don't have to quit your job. It's something you do part-time, And I said, I'm going to come to town. I'm throwing a dinner. I'm going to throw in my latest tape, give it to you free. I'm buying dinner. You listen to what I got to say about this, and then you decide whether you want to be with me or not on this. Shoot. Went to Minneapolis, had 35 people at dinner. All 35 signed up in the deal. Went to Chicago, had 30 people to dinner. All 30 people signed up in the deal. I mean, it was like automatic. If you're in it, we're in it. And it sounds like too good to be true. Well, it wasn't too good to be true. In my second month in that business, I got a check for $35,000 for 30 days' work.
Wow.
And that grew to $50,000 within 3 months. And in 14 months, I'd earned $1 million.
Wow.
Just networking with my fishing buds and representing this company that was selling long-distance telephone service. And it went from nothing to being the 4th largest in 8 years and became a $1 billion company. And the owner of the company sold it in 2002 for $3 billion. Wow. And he is he's an Illinoisan. He grew up in, what's that town in the center of the state?
Springfield?
No, in this halfway down. You go from north to south, halfway down. East.
Decatur?
No, but it's right on Wren Lake. Anyway, I forget the name of it, but anyway, his name's Kenny Trout, like the fish. So I figured this guy was a C- student, a football player, and he went to college on a football scholarship. He had an idea when they deregulated telephone service to get involved. It's like, being able to get into an outstanding industry, like almost like on a ground level floor. So he started it in 19 with some borrowed money. He borrowed $400,000. He had some guys, just like I have fishing buddies, he had football playing buddies. Put $5,000 on their credit card. One guy, the biggest contributor he had to the deal was $25,000. And 12 years later, he sold the company for $3 billion. The guy that put up the $25,000, his end of the sale was $125 million. talk about return on your income.
Yep.
Any rate, we had a terrific career there and retired to the country club. I was playing golf, I was back down to a 3 handicap at an old age, so having fun fishing, just doing nothing. And the new owners of the company 5 years later took it bankrupt, and we got a letter saying, that money you were supposed to be getting for the rest of your life, sorry, this is your last check, we're bankrupt.
Really?
Yeah. So my wife and I lasted a few years after that at the country club, and then moved and downsized. So that was the change from my fishing. It was just we had so much success, and I had been doing the full-time fishing deal since the 60s. So we were almost 30 years in the game, and there was still the frustration of, okay, I learned all my lessons. I did what I set out to do, was learn everything about new so I could go out and get rich, change the fishing world and all of that. And I wasn't able to change the fishing world. But I did learn everything that he had to offer. I learned my lessons and was recognized by a lot of people as being, one of the top fishermen in the country, and still wasn't able to do what I really wanted to do, which was to change that community and get them to think like we think, like we know is true. Knowledge is the key. That's simple. Never going to change.
Unfortunately,
no shortcut.
With the changes in technology, I sort of think it's a harder path now than it was even 20, 30 years ago to open. Half of me thinks it's a harder path. Half thinks that who knows, there's still maybe a shot at it, just because there's only a handful of people like yourself that accomplish deep water and can interpret deep water.
You can reason it, like you say. You can reason it both ways. It's a lot easier to reach millions of people today, but there are tens of thousands of people reaching those same people. So it's the same dilemma as when Buck broke onto the scene back in the day. Who do you believe? Well, you believe the guy that's got the fish. That's who you believe.
Right.
Because there are a lot of writers in outdoor life and all of these, the people going to all these exotic places to try to catch a fish, and average Joe Blow, me and you, we're working a job, we're doing, and, we get to go out on a weekend. We're not going to, Costa Rica fishing for black marlin. We're going down to the local lake trying to catch a bluegill. You know what I mean? That's the average guy. So the whole trick was, Buck come on the scene and says, I'm going to teach you how to catch fish in your lake. Not somewhere in Minnesota, not somewhere in Canada, not in Costa Rica. You don't have to travel. You don't have to take a vacation. You don't have to tell your wife there's no money for the kids for college. This is your lake. I'm going to show you how to catch fish in your lake. Well, what more perfect, what more could you ask for in a real tease to a guy who really wanted to catch fish? Hold on, what is that? Oh, it's that. It must be. The TV was probably saying, "What the heck's going on?" But it should have been so tempting that everybody just had to hold. And today, like you say, there's so many people doing it. There's so many people. You told me about these guys that are on the internet. They probably haven't seen enough water to take a bath in, for goodness sake, but yet they're getting a few hundred people coming out to Bass Pro Shops seeing them.
You're absolutely correct. It boggled my mind how many followers they have, and they're basically just catching a few small bass in these ponds here. But the only thing that really got me excited about it was that it is great seeing the youth get back into it again, because their followers are basically kids, 13 to 18 years old that have a passion for fishing, and that's one good thing they're doing. Is it was great to see all these young people out there interested in fishing. So that's what gets me a little bit excited, and that you got this new audience, young people coming up that love fishing, that don't know anything about Buck Perry's structure or anything like that.
Well, one of the problems that I see, that I envision for that crowd that you're talking about right now, is 13 to 18-year-olds. They are, especially today, way more so than we were back when we were that age. They are way more driven to the, I gotta have it right now. I want it right now. Not 2 years from now, not 3 years from now, not 5 years from now. I gotta have it now. Everything in their life is, I gotta have it now. I gotta have the latest phone. I gotta have it. I gotta have that, the new 7 Series phone. And just their whole life. That's how it's built today. Back when I was growing up, we got one gift for Christmas, and I was hoping that I would like it. Today's a different thing altogether. So it's when they're looking at this new little sort of hobby or leisure time thing to jump into. If they don't have, they can see these young guys and they could drive them to the lake maybe. But if they don't have any success, if they don't catch fish, they will quit. They will quit quicker than we would quit growing up, because we weren't always expecting that instant success, that instant, satisfaction. We never expected it. Like when I started playing baseball, you played every day. You didn't expect to make the team. Then you made the team. Well, you didn't expect to start. Well, then you kept working, and you ended up starting. And you didn't expect to get to the next team or to the All-Stars or win the conference, in high school, whatever. You didn't expect it, but you kept on working, and then it happened. But today, you try out, and you didn't like the coach the first day. The average kid today quits. My oldest son was a English teacher and a high school baseball coach. He was an excellent player. He was always the first guy there to practice, the last guy to leave, extra BP, everything. That was the kid. He was a leadoff hitter, or number one, most stolen bases, all of the above. He was the player. And he said, Dad, after 3 years, he said, I quit coaching. I'm not going to coach it ever again. I said, I can't believe that. It's so much part of your life. He was a straight A student, but he was also an excellent baseball player. Made 2 errors in 90 games in high school as a shortstop. He was a starter as a sophomore, and made 2 errors. He was Ozzie Smith. I said, I can't believe you're going to quit coaching. He said, Dad, I don't have one kid. I haven't had one kid in 3 years that wanted to take extra batting practice. I don't have one kid that wants to stay late to do extra, He said they can't wait to get out of there, to get home to their computer, to their games, that their TV stuff that the kids play. I don't even know what those games are, but all that stuff. He said, I can't find one kid that's driven to the game for the love of the game like I was. Not one in 3 years. He said, I'm sick of it. I can't do it anymore. So he quit. He's assistant principal today. He's 43 years old, and he's coaching Little League. He's a real baseball guy. But yeah, he's only coaching Little League because my grandson is a player. Same thing with the fishing. If these young kids that are attracted to it, if they don't have some success, and they're not going to have success watching what these couple of kids caught, a couple of young guys caught a few fish in the lily pads. You know what that's going to turn into, what it turns into for everybody else. Hardly ever catch a fish.
Right. And
they'll lose interest and they'll be gone. So I'm just wondering today, if I came on a computer and said, I'm going to have a daily, you call up and get a 1 minute educational piece or a 2 minute educational piece every day, something new I'm going to talk about humps. I'm going to talk about structure. I'm going to talk about weather. I'm going to talk about whatever. I'm going to talk about equipment. I'm going to talk about trolling and casting and everything under the sun. But I'm going to teach you the facts about what it takes to be a successful fisherman. How many people would look at that and listen to me versus listen to these young kids because of their age or something? I mean, I don't know. To me, even when we got on TV, there was only a handful. There was Al Linder and there was Babe Winkleman. Buck's original statement was never more true. You can't catch a fish where he ain't. You've got to get to the spot where the fish are. And sometimes you could be in the right area, but you're not at the right depth. If all the fish are at 60 feet, you're sitting over top of them fishing at 20, you're not going to catch any fish. So
that brings up one question.
But back then, there was only a few people out there doing the deal, Yeah. In fact, the last time I saw Al Linder was in Texas. This was probably 15 years ago. He said, Donnie, there's nobody left. It's you and me. We're the only guys left in the game,
That's what I was just going to ask. My question was, you mentioned Al Linder. History. I know he's also from Chicago, and I had heard that he read Buck's pamphlet, and and he not that much publicly, but on some small crowds, he definitely gives Buck his credit and all that information. But I was just wondering if you had any kind of relationship with him as well, or any other big names at that time.
I do, and keep in mind, Al Linder and Winkleman, those guys, we were friends. We were professional friends, but we didn't hang out together. But we're in the same game. We're all friends and friendly and so forth. And I'm a friendly guy, and they are too. Well, one thing about Al, though, he wanted to have all the attention. He didn't want to give credit. Like I said, any time I ever gave a speech, I prefaced it with, I never had an original idea. I'm just relaying the message from the guy, from the man. But Al wanted to be the man. But to the last time I was with him, he said, man, if it wasn't for Buck, either one of us would be here. We'd never caught a fish. I said, yeah, that's the truth. You got that right. But yeah, privately, he didn't have a clue until he got involved with Buck's material. Yeah. And Carl Maltz, who was a spoon plugger and was on the managing editor, or one of the editors of Fishing Facts. He's friends with all those guys. He's friends with, Linder and all those guys, And it was like a little club up there, those guys in Minnesota, all the walleye guys, and they do back trolling and that. But, if you talk to Linder, Buck got them on the outside edges of the weed line, and that's where they started catching their fish. Whether they're going backwards, frontwards, or sideways, didn't matter. They were fishing, for the first time where there were some fish. But he rather, and I understand this. It was his business. He was promoting Al Linder. He was promoting, certain boats who were his sponsors and so on and so forth. He was in business. He was under no obligation to say, I learned this all from Buck Perry, and I just put my own little spin on it so I could make money, which was what happened. But he couldn't say that because he was in business, and he didn't have an obligation to say it. I had an obligation because I was a flat out number one spoon plugger. I wasn't just a guy in the fishing business who learned some stuff from Buck. I was a spoon plugger, and I was representing spoon plugging and representing Buck. And I never thought it was right for anybody. There's some degree of plagiarism in every walk of life, in everything. Preachers plagiarize other preachers' sermons, and it goes on all over the place, in music and in novels and in artwork. There's all kinds of plagiarism. It always is going to exist. However, when you have singularly one guy who made all of the discoveries that have created what we know today as modern day fishing, he created all of the nomenclature that's used. It's silly to stand up in front of people or to show up and act like somehow all this stuff was your idea. I mean, it's silly.
Right.
It just is. It's much easier to give the credit where the credit is due and say, I thank the good Lord that I was so fortunate that I had got to physically learn all my fishing lessons from that man. I got to mentor under him. It was a privilege.
Wow. Yeah, and there's
Smartest guy ever. 12 years. And my old partner, Tommy Francis, he lasted about 8 years. But Tommy's a great fisherman. Tommy learned his lessons. He's a fighter. He's one of those 5'7" and he's a scratch golfer and can beat your ass if you give him any trouble. He's one of those guys that he's not going to lose. And he just got so frustrated with the lack of financial success and so on and so forth. But make no mistake, Ken, we worked together for 8 years, and finally he said, I can't go anymore. I just can't go anymore. I kept going, and he left the game, but he's still catching fish like crazy. He lives over in Ormond Beach. He lives in Florida. And we stay in touch from time to time. But great guy, and yeah, he worked as hard as I did for the first 8 years. Actually, he came on board about a year after I was full-time. Tommy came on board, but
now was he friends of yours previously, or isn't he?
Yeah, he went to the same. We went to the same high school I went to. We were the same age and everything. And when he found out I was catching fish in Shenango, he got together with me. And he had a little 14-foot aluminum boat, and he had a 9.8 Merc on it. And I said, "Bring your boat. I'll show you what I'm doing." That's how we got together. Even though we went to the same high school, we didn't loaf, outside of that ever, until he found out I was catching fish and got a hold of me, and that's how we got together. So we were creating the boat and all of that stuff. He was part of all of that.
Wow.
Good guy.
Well,
like I say, he's still catching fish. He's just not working at it.
Yeah. Well, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking the time. Talk to me.
It was fun. We managed to allow me to remember all kinds of things that I'd pretty much forgotten. But the thing to pass along to some of the guys is you do have the advanced material, right? You need to study it. And listen, anytime you or any of your guys have any questions about mapping a structure or anything like that, you feel free to give them my phone number. Tell them to give me a call. I'd be happy to speak with them. I just won't do it over 3 hours. But I'd be happy to answer a specific question or something because, as I say, I am retired. I'm not doing a whole lot. Other than picking up my grandson today, and then later on we're going to mother-in-law's for a big dinner tonight with some other people, some anniversaries going on, some different things. But I'm pretty much not doing a whole lot of anything right now. So just let them know they got any specific questions. Give them my phone number. Tell them give me a call and introduce themselves. I'd be happy to talk to them.
Very gracious of you. I'm sure a couple of guys are probably going to do that. So that's great.
Not a problem.
All right.
Listen, I have my wife send you, if I decide to do this, I'll have her send you that picture of my new what do you call it? Facebook page. If I decide to allow her to go through with it, we'll stay in touch.
Well, that'd be great.
All right, Jimmy?
Okay.
All right, buddy. It's been fun, man.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. See ya. Bye.
Bye.